there and you do not replace it with something better, you haven't achieved anything. Okay? So, people say, what about all these religions? Well, they have their purpose. If the individual or the person identifies with that and is doing his charity according to that principle, there's nothing wrong with that, because this is where their mind and heart is. Well, take that away from them. In other words, we go to the south and they're all Baptists. That's perfectly all right by me, because they're all kind, helpful, loving human beings. You can't take their belief system away if you cannot replace it with something better. In this path, it is also the same, because you're going to go through these phases, and it says you're going to leave behind what is comfortable to you, which is what you're talking about, that preconception, which is illusion, but nevertheless you have made it a part of you for such a long time. Maybe not just in this lifetime, but the previous ones as well. It is so ingrained in you, and now you're going to try and remove it, and it's going to cause you pain and suffering. What else? Fear. Because once you remove it, you feel, what did we say, isolated. I'm thinking, what's going on? Why do I feel this sense of loss? There's nothing out there that should give me that sense of loss, but nevertheless you feel it. Why? Because you're removing these illusion out of yourself slowly, and now the higher self comes in with its light, but it is a process you have to go through. What happens to a lot of people? They turn psychic. They do not follow all of these stages and become a spiritual. There's a tremendous difference, by the way, because they become fearful and they stop. You can't stop in the middle of it. What would happen if you were driving and suddenly you stop the car? All the other cars are going to come and hit you. All the forces of nature will hit you. You cannot stop in the middle, because once the door closes behind you, you cannot go backwards. That's just the rule of nature. You can only move forward. And a lot of people turn psychic when they get scared. What is psychic? They activate the lower self again. The preconceptions that we're trying to put in a bag and remove, they invite it back. Because that one life will break it, will not allow it. So, what is the process? Take it very slow. Simple, we put simple, and slow. Go slow was Mr. Judge's last words. Go slow. Because you try to do this too fast, you might end up in the asylum. It's true. Mm-hmm. You can't remove things fast and not be able to replace them with the right stuff, because it takes time. Well, thank you, everyone. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have one? I forgot yours.
I don't necessarily have a question. It's
okay.
Just sort of an observation, and maybe you can help me with it.
Okay.
It seems like, and you probably have already discussed this many times, so you'll have to forgive me. It seems as though the cause of all the pain and suffering is, it goes back to concern of self,
mm-hmm.
and being self-centered,
yeah.
selfish, everything having to do with self, the lower mind, all of that. All of these, I don't know what you call these, greed and jealousy and
yeah.
all of that has to do with concern of self. It seems like in order to sort of move out of that and move towards what you say we are supposed to do, allow that divine light to come in and that thought to come in, it seems as though if we are in a particular situation, and let's say there could be jealousy, as I experienced with my daughter at one particular time, which is very interesting. I was jealous of her going to another woman who was my son's mother-in-law, and inviting her also to go for a medical appointment along with me. So I was jealous of, as a mother, that she'd go to another woman my age. And when I discussed this with someone who I thought had wonderful spiritual ideas, she completely turned things around, and I saw the focus was on me at that moment where jealousy set in. But what she turned it to is, wouldn't you want your daughter to experience more love? Isn't that interesting? To have more love of another person joining her and walking this path with her. So I think that maybe when we focus, as you mentioned, on that divine light coming in, when we begin to see every situation as concern for the other rather than for oneself, you completely purge yourself of all of that naturally.
Well, it's a growth.
Yes,
You're actually describing a growth process of the soul, and that is our everyday events that come to us. They come to teach us a lesson. Obviously, it was something that you needed to learn, and it is very difficult to let go of your preconception, which you had in that case. So, if you think that we're all one and that we participate in each other, that's another way of looking at it. We're not separate individuals. We look separate, but we are not. Because the essence, this one life, the essence in the core, that anahata, that pulsates in each human heart, is the same. It's just that we are not attuned to hear it. And until you have reached this nakedness of the soul described in these processes, you will not be able to hear it, because the voice of the silence says, when your form appears unreal to you, when you can no longer hear the elephant or the buzzing of the butterfly, where have you gone? What have you attuned yourself to? The inner voice. That's the only time you can hear it. All these, because we don't hear the cry in the world because we're all in pain, all of humanity is suffering. We don't hear it because we shut the frequency out. We cut the frequency of your own nation. You don't hear people asking for help. Your own family, you might tune them out too if they're coming to you for help. Everybody has to answer those questions for themselves, but this is reality. And then when it comes to yourself, you also tune yourself to the frequency you want to function at. According to your ideas, preconceptions, biases, you make that real to you. And everything else is exclusive. It's outside of that. But when you attune yourself to that inner ear, it is part of all and everything. Every heart pulsates with it. That's what you're going to hear, the inner sound.
I just wanted to ask you about the attuning yourself to the frequency. I have heard some people say saying a mantra or calling the name of a spiritual being attunes you to a higher frequency. What does HPB say about that?
Yeah, frequency is a vibration, and your higher mind obviously vibrates at a higher rate than the lower mind, does it not? Yes?
I've been listening to things to try to raise my frequency lately, and the one I listened to this morning, which sort of took me by surprise because I wasn't thinking of this being something to do that, was loving yourself. And I have this music that was done by Masaru Emoto, who did that water crystal healing.
Right.
And he has a song in there for self-love, and he says, sit and listen to that and think about what it means, and it's amazing how it just
It pulls you up.
lifts you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, mantras work too. Normally there's in Sanskrit the mantras that whatever appeals to your nature, go to it. Because everybody has a particular book that appeals to your nature. You go. It can be the Bible too. The Bible has passages in it that are realistically true. It's just its interpretation is not given correctly. Whatever it is. But ignorance is really the mother of everything, we are told in Theosophy. If you have knowledge, you can remove the obstacle. It's the ignorance that keeps the obstacle in its place. Ignorance. We don't know. So we function the same automatic level every single day. We address the things in a similar manner. That is what needs to change, that automaticity. And that takes effort, and it is very tough. To put your threshold of your mind when thoughts come in and say, I'm not going to think that way. That's not an easy thing to do because you have allowed it before. Do you think now that the thought is just automatically disappear? It will not. You have to work for it, and this is what you are bringing to our attention. Thank you, because it is tough. Thank you, everyone.
You